Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time. And I am so happy to do this reaction video. One of the guys I follow and admire is Thatch Nguyen. I'm lucky enough to have him on my channel a couple of times. I consider him a friend. He put out a video very recently that was recommended, and I agree with it. It's the 3 mistakes that he made in the last recession. And Millennial Mike was nice enough to chop it up so we can react to it. So first out, Thatch, thank you for all you do. If you don't follow Thatch, you're missing out.
He's a Seattleite like me, good guy. And then shout out to the Instagram follower whose username I can't remember right now. I'm sorry, but they sent this video to me and to Mike at the same time. If you do want videos reacted to, just send it our way. I'll get it queued up for Mike to give his response to. So we're going to jump right into these 3 mistakes. You ready, Mike?
Mm-hmm.
Today, I want to share with you all the 3 big mistakes that I made in the last recession. 1, I wrote down buying deal with low margin and negative cash flow. When I started, I would go after areas, neighborhood, cities, town, where I could actually buy deals at what I call a cheaper price point. And I would say, yeah, you know what? I'm just starting. I don't have a lot of money. I should buy those property because it's less money out of my pocket. But I realized the longer I own these property, I realized, geez, these property didn't have a lot of equity in it. And after years go by, it didn't go up much in value. As a flipper, you got to think, if worst case scenario come and you couldn't get the price you want, are you willing to keep the property and rent it? And does it cash flow then?
So, Mike, I think he made a bunch of really good points there, but he said, don't buy a low-priced property that has negative cash flow. Don't buy an alligator property. I mean, I've heard you say that a million times.
Yeah, my first book, One Rental at a Time. The only picture in the book is a picture of an alligator. Yeah, that one right there. A friend of mine did. Shout out Tom for creating that for me. Yeah, never buy an alligator. And I still get questions today. Oh, I've been looking forever. I can't do this. I can't do that. Should I do this? Should I? No alligator properties. It's just one of my, it's a rule for a reason. So yeah, never buy a negative cash flow property. Never refi and create a negative cash flow property. It's when the market gets soft, it hurts. So never do that. Second, I have a saying, you can go broke buying cheap. And I think this really was kind of his mistake is, hey, I don't have a lot of money, but I want in the game. So the only thing I could do is buy this cheap thing in this other city. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it just cause. Oh man, cheap. You can go broke buying cheap. And then lastly, he talked about kind of flippers. Right. There's some flippers in the game right now whose debt structure and hard money and all of this, that they might be thinking about becoming a landlord because they have to, but they're going to have an alligator because the debt structure and price point is all wrong. That might feel like slow bleeding, but man, find another way, lease option or something out of it. So yeah, I agree with him. Never buy an alligator. It was one of my big lessons with my very first property. It was a great cash flow property, and then I got stupid and I made the refi too big, and it turned into an alligator, and it hurt every freaking month. So yeah, I agree with him, and yeah, don't buy cheap just cause you can go broke buying cheap. So I think Thatch is right.
Yeah, and because of that story that Mike shared in his book about Norris Drive, and he did a cash out refi, and he turned a cash flowing property into a alligator. I'm in the middle of doing a refi right now. I have the ability to take out $93,000, but I would create an alligator property, and so I've had to ask my lender to give me a much lower refi back. I'm still going to make a bunch of money, but a much lower refi back to have a better monthly payment. Because of the advice in that book, I will not sacrifice or move my standards on what I want for cash flow. So I would definitely take that advice to heart. But are you ready for his second mistake?
Absolutely. I love Thatch.
Point number 2, the big mistake I made in the last recession. I wrote down buying deal in a secondary market. I call it a C market. These market right here, they have low ARV and low rent. The biggest lesson I learned again, when the market turns, these C area get hit the hardest. And also these tenant in these area also get hit the hardest. Buy it in at least a B area. If you can buy it in the B area, you do better on the ARV, you do better on appreciation, and you do better on rent. And you get better tenant, you have better peace of mind.
All right. So on that one, he's talking about not buying in the wrong area, because if his strategy, which was fixing and flipping, if you buy in the wrong area and that market turns, you're going to be left, unfortunately holding the hot potato.
Mhm. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things in that really for flippers and or buy and hold landlords like you and I. What he's really talking about, I want to split this because there's actually two things that are subtle. One is he's talking about like what I'll call tertiary areas, just to kind of clean up the language, right? You could think about, hey, big city, then 30 minutes, 60 minutes away, right? So a tertiary city, you could think about being 60 minutes away. In a great economy, those markets are rocking and rolling. It's actually why I talked to Omar, who's in what's called the high desert. The high desert, I think it's like 60 or 70 minutes east of Orange County, LA, right? It feels it first. One of the reasons I talked to Omar, because his market feels it first, good or bad. That's a tertiary market because when the economy gets soft, people get closer to the job hubs. When the economy is good, they go farther away. So there's that. So again, watch the market. And then he's talking about C. I think he's really talking about kind of C tenant C area, because there's class A, class B, class C. So I think he's talking about that too, and that's interesting because again, class C, a lot of folks will think is Section 8. There's a lot of money to be made in Section 8. Again, if you buy the right products and the right stuff, because again, a lot of the rent's guaranteed. But in a normal recession, you're absolutely right. The lower end of the income scale feels it first. I think this particular recession might be different. I would actually be most nervous about Class A. I think Class A is overbuilt. I think it's overfinanced. I think, as we said in the previous videos, we're in a white collar recession, not blue collar. So it's going to be very, very interesting. So again, I think really the important part here for me is that just talking of tertiary areas, right? If you're going to invest in a market that's 60 minutes away, realize a recession will punish that market hard as people want to get closer to the job market. So be careful.
Yeah. And again, if he comes at it from his perspective of he always likes to buy things and add value, it's going to be hard in any recession. It's going to be especially hard in a area or neighborhood. And I'm from Seattle, same as him. So when I think of that particular city he might be talking about, if he's used to doing stuff in nice areas like Bellevue and then all of a sudden starts looking in Lakewood or Tacoma, it's going to be a lot harder to add value during a recession if you know that market.
There you go. I like it.
All right. Mistake number 3. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
The last thing I want to say is this: what I learned. I didn't have reserve money for rainy days. And I over leverage property too much. When I was starting out, I used to, as much as I say I want to, have equity, I buy rental property. I let the market basically ride in appreciation. As soon as I actually have that thing at more than 20% equity, I refinance it. I do a HELOC on the property. I pull money out so I can actually go buy another rental property. The problem also, when you have more door low equity and you don't have cash reserve for rainy days, when it hit hard. And so I experienced it through the first 3 cycles. When the market take a dip, all of a sudden the tenant leaves. And now you got to rehab the property. And then after that, then you got to find a tenant. Well, when you don't have cash reserve for these kind of rainy days, you don't have money to rehab the property. When I ask a lot of investors, what's their biggest regret? You know what they all say to me? I wish I would have kept more property for rent.
Yeah, so Mike, on that one, he's talking about cash reserves. And if you don't have it, you're going to run into a bunch of problems that you're not equipped to handle, which might force you to sell the property. And then at the end, he wrapped it up by saying, the biggest regret most investors say they have is they wish they'd kept more properties to rent.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. So one of the things, if people watch my channel, they know I flipped I don't know, let's just round it up to 60 homes in the last 3 or 4 years. I agree. I should have kept all of them. So first off, yeah, the few regrets that I have around real estate, it's all about what I've sold, not what anything else. Second, yeah, you've got to have emergency funds, capital reserves, because you don't want to become a forced seller. I talk about it all the time, right? If you have this emergency fund, I've been very clear, right? Olivia and I have a $50,000 emergency fund, and we've had that for, let's call it, a decade for our portfolio. And there was a time, I don't know, kind of like 2011 or 12, where we were out of capital. We didn't have access to anything else, but we had this 50K on the side. And, I could have taken it, got another deal or two, but that's untouchable, untouchable, because you have to have it for rainy days. And as he said, when it hits hard, right? I don't know about you, but stuff breaks in threes in my portfolio, right? One AC never goes out. It's always two or three. And so yeah, I agree. Don't never become a forced seller because you drained your emergency fund. It should be untouchable. And I'm very clear. I have that 50K in another bank, not connected to any other bank. I have to go to that bank to get the money if I ever need it. Right. So it's untouchable. So he's right.
Yeah, if you don't have the money ready to go on a moment's notice, you're going to find yourself in a precarious situation at the worst time. Murphy gets a vote, right? Murphy's Law says if something bad can't happen and at the worst time, well, that's what's going to happen. So, I just got all of my properties stabilized. I was working on 2 separate Burr strategy properties, got them rented, got them stabilized. First month, everything comes in from all my units. I was like, this is great. And then boom, right in the face, $4,500 plumbing expense that I have to dig up some line, and was maybe going to be the city's problem, but now it's mine. But, if I didn't have the cash reserves to just pay for that I've been setting aside out of when I run my numbers, I set it aside anyways, I might be in a bad situation. So you don't want something that's going to eventually happen to derail you and force you to make poor decisions or go into debt that you don't want, something like that. So, Mike, those were his 3 mistakes. My only question for you is there any additional pieces of advice or mistakes that you've made in previous recessions that you would encourage people to avoid?
Yeah, the one that, because I saw this video, I actually watched it. I love Thatch that much. The one for me is the biggest mistake I made in my first recession is I got emotional. Right. People read my book, they realize that my first big investments were in the stock market, took $7,000 to 200. And then I got emotional. I got cocky. I stopped doing the work and I got smacked by Murphy and criminals and fraud and all of that stuff. Ended up with 40 grand. I was emotional in the beginning and it kept losing. And then I got emotional. And I didn't touch stocks for 15 years. So yeah, I have to check my emotion. That's why real estate makes sense to me, right? I can do the math and it's all math. So watch emotions. That's what I would tell you.
Yeah, I think that's actually really, really good advice. And I'm a relatively emotionless being, which is probably why I'm not married and you are. So at least that go for me, Mike. Just kidding. Hey, we got another Thatch video and a Milton Friedman video coming up. So we'll see you on those ones.